Hey GBA fans, I'm Choice CJ, back again with my co-host Jamesanity.
Hello.
And once again, we are going to be bringing you guys our Game of the Week coverage for Season 7 of the GBA. And following our discussion of Game of the Week, we will be going into the Season Award Watch, where we will discuss the Offensive Mod of the Season, Defensive Mod of the Season, and Coach of the Season. Now, we had a pretty awesome showdown last week in terms of games. I picked the game between the Jasmine and the Pelipers, and you picked the game between the Donphan and the Scissors. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right, good. So it's kind of funny. In a way, we're sort of going to be switching coaches this week, if I'm understanding correctly. James, do you want to start us off with your game of the week?
So this will mean that the Utah Jasmine have been picked all weeks. I chose the Utah Jasmine versus the San Francisco Giants for my match of the week. And the reason I chose this match is because I believe it was the closest match out of all of them. Neither coach played badly at all, and it really came down to a 50-50 at the end. But the first thing they have to mention is the offensive Amoongus on Gio's part. It was revealed against the Zapdos. It was going for HP Fires, and that did a really decent chunk with a 60 base move that isn't stab. Sludge Bomb would have easily done over half, and with the Toxic, the Zapdos was really getting whittled down. It prevented the Zapdos from being more of a defensive check to the Amoongus and just being able to kill it outright. One interesting part that I'm sure a lot of people will be wondering about is the devastating Drake with Salamence on the Lantern. I don't believe that was the correct play, since Cloyster immediately came in and killed it with 2 Ice Shards. What can you do, I guess? That's just hindsight, but he really couldn't have gone for Outrage either, seeing as it would have locked him into Outrage and the same exact situation would have happened. So I guess he just wanted to show off Devastating Drake. That was pretty cool. As I mentioned earlier, the 50-50 at the end, the little coin flip that happened, which is the Amoongus, whether it goes for Giga Drain or whether it goes for Sludge Bomb. If the Zapdos switched in, then Sludge Bomb would have been the correct play. But if Pro stayed in, then Giga Drain would have most likely been the correct play. And he did go for Giga Drain, and the Zapdos did switch in. So, unfortunate for Gio, but it could have gone in either player's favor at any point, and that's why I chose it.
Yeah, this game was, I agree that it was a pretty exciting game. There was lots of opportunities where Gio was trying to set up, and I don't think he was necessarily doing it to try and win the game outright, but he just wanted to apply a lot of pressure to NecroStevo, and that's what made this game pretty exciting for me. Like, the bulk up Conkeldurr, like, setting up on a Klefki is kind of odd, but it would have been better if the Klefki hadn't been packing the Reflect, because it could have 2-hit KO'd the Klefki, it would have gotten a lot of its health back with the Drain Punch, and it would have been really potent at poking holes in NecroStevo's team. And then similarly with the Calm Mind Tapu Fini, it was able to take out the Klefki, and then it followed up by taking out the Scrafty, and it was only after Zapdos came in and went for 2 Volt Switches that the Tapu Fini was able to go down. And yeah, I agree with you at the end. Like, the reason that this was such a good game was because, you know, despite the back and forth, you know, the second to last turn of the game is what decided it. It could have gone either way. It just depended on what both players clicked. It went NecroStevo's way in his debut match. So
yeah, congrats to Necro on that one.
I'll go ahead and talk to you guys about my game of the week, which was the Philadelphia Scissors versus the St. Louis Rampardos, Chimpact versus A-Drive. And I'll be the first one to admit that this is a weird game because it was one of the quickest games of the season, and it's not like it resulted in like a 6-0 sweep. A lot of the times where you see these matches that are like 15 to 20 minutes that are played on Wi-Fi, they're almost always like a really ridiculous sweep. But this was actually a really close game. It was a 2-0, and it started right off the bat with the Volcanion scoring a crit on the Electros. It was a crit that definitely was important. The Electros was assault vested, and it would have lived otherwise. And the match did not slow down. Toxapex came in, and even though that Dan knew that the Toxapex was set up fodder for Kyurem, He went for the toxic spikes. Kirim came right on in and proceeded to get 2 more kills by the end of the 6th turn of the game. So it was a 6-3 deficit for Dan just after turn 6, which is crazy. Just the amount of offensive pressure that was being applied at the start of that game was really awesome. Then the Victini comes in to revenge kill the Kirim. Volcanion tries to come in and revenge kill the Victini. And it was so cool to see that Victini live on 1 HP versus the Earth Power. I bet Chimp is pretty salty, not only because it ended up affecting his differential quite dramatically, but because Volcanion is awfully close to the top of the kill leaderboard, so he might have liked that 1 extra kill on his Volcanion. But as it was, the Thunderous could come in, revenge the Victini, which invited in the Haxorus. And this kind of set up a series of plays that were kind of interesting. The Thunderous was preserved because Toxapeck was still in the back. That's a play that I can agree with. And he goes into Azu as Dan goes for a Dragon Dance. And then Chimp is expecting his Azu to get sniped right away by Poison Jab. Dan actually made it an aggressive play and goes for a Dragon Claw, expecting the Gligar to switch in. Now, this might not seem like a huge play, but I think that Dan's on the right track here, and this is how he's been able to be successful in many of the past GBA seasons. When he detects that he's in these situations where he's really on the back foot, he's able to make these aggressive plays, and that playstyle is really good. I think in this one instance, though, like, Dragon Claw wasn't exactly the right play. Like, if he was expecting the Gligar switch in, I think Dragon Dance would have been the better play, because then he gets a +2, the Gligar is in range of being 2 KO'd from a +2 Dragon Claw, and then now he hasn't basically wasted this turn, because the Azumarill makes the correct play going for Aqua Jet. It's going to put it in range of EQ combined from Dugtrio and Gligar. But now Dan sort of lost a turn. He took 25% chip on his Haxorus. That 25% chip is like 3 Life Orb hits. So it didn't really end up affecting the outcome of the match, especially because the Dugtrio was sashed the whole time. So it was going to OHKO after 2 rounds of Aqua Jet anyway. But I just wanted to point that out, that Dan's playstyle of making these aggressive plays is definitely very good. People get down on Dan, but I think he still has the skills to make it work this season. And of course, it goes without saying that Chimp is continually proving to all of us that he is one of the top players in the GBA.
Yeah, I do agree with you on some of those points, but I have to disagree with you on others as well. I didn't like the match with the turn 1 crit. As you know from last week, I don't like Haxie matches, and that crit kind of determined the entire flow of the match from that point. I think Dan was kind of on the back foot for the vast majority of the match. Victini was in getting a couple kills and living on 1 HP and everything like that, but other than that small section of the match, it was kind of just Chimp's ride. Haxorus going for the Dragon Claw on Azumarill, that was a misplay on Dan's part. I wouldn't call that a 50-50. I wouldn't call that anything like that. I just say it was a misplay straight up. The match just went a bit too fast for me. It was over really quickly before any real game-changing stuff could happen, other than turn 1, obviously, when Volcanion crit the Electros. But nothing else really big or massive or game-changing happened since then. I see you could make an argument for the Victini living on 1 HP, but that really only made difference in differential, as you said. It didn't really change the flow of the match too much.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. The part of the reason that I wanted to pick this too is just because we rarely see games that end this quickly in the GBA, like I said. Especially this was so much fast-hitting offense. It was a cool change of pace. But your points are well taken, and we unfortunately do not have a guest this week. But if you guys want to tell us down in the comments section below which game was your favorite this week, whether it was one of the 2 that we chose or if it was one of the others, we'd be happy to hear your opinion. So that'll wrap up the Game of the Week section. Let's move on into the Season Award Watch. So as we do every week, we go over the most likely candidates in our eyes for the Offensive Mon of the Season, Defensive Mon of the Season, and of course Coach of the Season. And this is still a pretty early look, but we are almost halfway through the season now, James. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're thinking for offensive mon of the season?
So the offensive mon of the season category is, I would say, split into 3 tiers. The top tier is still Cobalion from the Detroit Steel Wings. It may not have come this week, but it still has a very impressive kill list and kill count. And Volcanion from the Philadelphia Scissors is also making its return. And it also has a very impressive kill count. It sadly couldn't get a kill on Victini this week, but it still has performed very well. And now for the second sort of tier, we have 4 different Pokemon that we could see winning the award, but not as likely candidates as Cobalion and Volcanion. We have Crocodile from the Detroit Steel Wings. Got off a sweep a couple of weeks ago, but other than that, it hasn't really done too much. Lucha from the Florida Gators is a similar situation. It did get a kill this week, but it hasn't done too much influential since its week 1 sweep. The Alolan Muck is also somewhat in that category, but Alolan Muck has its kills more spread out in a way. And then there's Magnezone, also of the San Diego Chimchargers. This one didn't really get off a big sweep like the other 3, but would say that it's just putting in a general amount of good, hard work. And then we have our third tier, and these are Landorus Incarnate from the Free State Torcats and Terrakion from the St. Louis Rampardos. They've both performed okay, but it's kind of a situation where they haven't really done too much recently, and they're starting to fall off their pedestals a bit. So I have to choose to rank them lower simply because they haven't really been performing up to their levels recently.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of those. Cobalion, I'm still in shock that it's at the top of the kill leaderboard, but Crimson's really showing us that it's a mon that you can't sleep on. And I really love Volcanion and how well Chimp's using it. And then a lot of the other Pokemon on this list are big surprise Pokemon, like the Magnezone and the Muck. I love how this list is just filled with Pokemon that you wouldn't expect. I think that makes it really exciting. I'm going to go ahead and move on into the defensive Pokemon category, and we have several returning faces to this category. I think, fortunately, this category is a bit more clear than the offensive mon category. Zapdos is still probably my top pick. Even though it didn't necessarily wall a lot of Pokemon this week, I think it did a great job. The fact that the Zapdos led off versus the Bronzong, it drew the Toxic and was able to prevent rocks from going up, I think was really cool. And then even though it was Toxic, so it didn't have many great opportunities to roost, and it couldn't roost versus the Amoonguss for the reasons that James mentioned, it was still able to get a revenge kill on the Tapu Fini. It was able to finish off the game versus that Amoonguss after Geo lost the 50-50, so I think that's worthy of a top spot here. Melodic from the New Orleans Pelipers did not come to the Week 5 match, but still has proved that it belongs in this conversation. Fortress is a mon that we mentioned last week, and even though it did not come to the Week 5 match versus the St. Louis Rampardos, I still think that Chimp and the Philadelphia Scissors have been using Fortress very well. Porygon 2 is another good Pokemon that deserves a mention. This one did come to the Week 5 match between the San Jose Sharpedos and the Detroit Steel Wings. I thought P2 was really cool this week because Tom brought the Regenerator, sorry, not the Regenerator ability, the Trace ability, which allowed it to copy the Regenerator, and it was able to heal itself up versus that Slowbro. It also traced and Intimidate on the Crocodile, which I thought was cool. Tom's been using the Trace ability on Intimidate elsewhere this season versus Geo, and even though the P2 was asleep, he was still able to apply that pressure versus the Crocodile. And then last but not least, a very good Pokemon that has been proving its worth this season and hasn't gotten a mention until now is Miltank. Miltank has been on my radar ever since the match between the Tampa Bay Luxrays and the Borussia Donphan, where Miltank was able to 1v1 a bulk up Tornadus Incarnate. But this week, it really brought its game up a notch. It was able to get 3 kills versus the San Francisco Arcaniners. George just did not have the offensive pressure that he needed to take out the Miltank. And for that reason, we've decided to include Miltank in this prestigious category. And that's going to be wrapping things up for my defensive Mon category.
Coach of the Season is our last section, and I hate to choose it by record, but we still have to go with Monatui and the Tampa Bay Lux Rays. He stomped on George, and that feels wrong to say because George was our last season's champion, but Mono just kind of trained through George this week. And he's still 5-0, and he's still undefeated, and he's the only undefeated coach left. So, for those reasons, we have to give it to Monatui.
You know, the fact that Mono did so well versus George, it's not anything to, we're not trying to put George down. Like, George is obviously still a really talented player. It's just more of a testament to Mono and how well he's been performing this season. So we know that George is going to bounce back, and he's shown that he's a really awesome builder. I really liked the Nasty Plot Mew set, but Mono just showed that he did really well. He perfectly anticipated the Raikou and brought the Calm Mind Florges. The Miltank was able to get 3 kills, as I mentioned. I suppose that brings us right to the end of our video, my friend Jamesanity. Is there anything you want to say to the audience before we sign off?
Yes, actually. 1, make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. 2, make sure to join the GBA Fan Discord. We're all there. You can talk to us. You can talk to other GBA fans about pretty much whatever you want. It's a great server, and you should really go there. And number 3, you should be following the website if you haven't. So I'm sure those will be in the description. CJ, do you have any closing words?
No, not too much. Yeah, just make sure you check out all those things that he described. We'll be dropping a link to that fan doc in the description. And, of course, we'll encourage you guys to check out all of our wonderful coaches. That way you can keep up to date on all of the weekly content. These battles do come out weekly, but I'm sure you guys knew that. And on behalf of Jamesanity, my name is Choice CJ. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys next time.